Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hey everybody, it's Josh here. Welcome to episode 2, as my French-speaking friends might say. This is episode 2, and it's an interview with my colleague and friend, Tim Strifler. Those of you in the Divi community probably know him from his site at Divi Life, which just so happens to house some of my favorite plugins and child themes and resources for Divi. He's also a partner in a site called WP Gears with David Blackman from Divi Space, and they have some incredible courses for web designers. They also have a podcast for WordPress enthusiasts called WP The Podcast, which is a nifty little podcast. It has shorter, more bite-sized episodes, which is unlike what you're going to hear in this one because this is an in-depth interview with Tim, and I am fired up after this interview. I am so inspired after hearing Tim's story and how he's remained successful and consistent through the past few years. And I've kind of seen him, I've watched him grow multiple businesses, and we get an inside peek at what Tim did and what he continues to do in order to have success in web design and everything that he's got going on. So if you have a web design business or you're ready to start one and you want to know what it takes to be successful, this is your episode. We cover a lot of really, really important methods and strategies that you can apply to your business no matter where you're at in your career, no matter what you're looking to do. We're going to talk about what it takes to be successful in web design. And you're going to hear some of my experience and obviously from Tim on what it's taken to be successful with all of his endeavors. Before we dive into this episode is presented by my web design business course. So if you have a web design business, if you're looking to take it to the next level, or maybe you're doing it part-time and you want to go full-time, I have a whole business course that will walk you through all of the most important tactics, methods, and strategies to build a six-figure business, and I'll show you everything that I've learned along the way, including a lot of hard lessons learned. So I would love to help guide you to build a successful business. Check out the link below in the show notes, and you'll be able to get some more information on that. I would love to help guide you to creating a successful web design business. And it's interesting, a lot of the topics that Tim and I cover in this episode are actually pulled from both of our courses. So if you like what you hear in this episode, check out my business course. Would love to help you take you to the next level. All right, guys, without further ado, please enjoy my interview with the one and only Mr. Timothy Strifler. Tim, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Josh. I know we've been talking about this for a while. I know you've been planning this podcast for a while, so I am honored that I am one of your first interviews, if not your first interview. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you, man. Yeah, we're doing, this is my first interview for the podcast, and I think I'm going to feature you as my first interview, episode number 2. So really excited to chat with you here. And what we're going to do in this one is talk about basically, in short, how to be successful with web design. Not only have you been a colleague and a friend of mine for the past few years, but I followed you before that. So I've seen you just completely not own the Divi community, but you have really placed yourself as an expert consistently for years. And I'm really excited to talk about, in depth how you do that on a regular and consistent basis. And more importantly, what people can take from that and apply to their own businesses. Before we dive into that, what's going on new with you right now? Because you just moved, right? You just relocated and all kinds of stuff is going on.
Yeah, I just relocated back to California where I'm from. So born and raised in Southern California. My wife and I moved to the Austin, Texas area for 3.5 years. And now we just came back. So I'm still kind of getting settled in the new house. We had some work done. And so my office isn't quite set up yet. I had a YouTube video tutorial and someone was complaining about clutter behind me. And I'm like, I'm still getting moved in, man. Like, so yeah, apologies if anyone else is seeing the clutter. I tried to hide it a little more for this interview, but there's definitely some clutter, which is the result of moving halfway across the country. So
it does not look too shabby. A lot of you guys right now are listening to this on iTunes or whatever with the podcast, but this is on video too on my YouTube channel. So you can see this conversation and see Tim's office, which is brightly colored and has some cool lighting. So no, it's looking good, man. I know, moving is no joke and it takes a while to get going. With that said, you're doing a lot. You're running Divi Life, and you have products and child themes and resources and plugins with all that. And you're involved with David Blackman with WP Gears and your guys' WP the podcast. Um, before we talk about that, and before we talk about how you maintain all that and are successful with that, can you just summarize your story and how you got into web design? I mean, did you set out and say, I'm going to start a web design business, or like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, no, I definitely not. And some people will say, like, when they're starting a business that they kind of back into something, or, they started by accident. And that is definitely the case with me. My dad's a graphic designer, so I always kind of start my story with him, because I feel like that does play a part, being exposed to design and that whole world of like creative graphic arts. At a young age, I was exposed to it and kind of, familiar with it, but I had no plans. Like, I didn't consider myself like an artistic or, super creative person. But I've always been a little bit technical, like always good with technology type things. And it kind of started way back when my wife and I got engaged. So this is like 2012. My wife asked me to go and create a wedding website, right? If anyone who's been married knows that, like, the bride typically does all the planning and then the husband gets a small list of things to handle. Well, on my list was create a wedding website. And at the time, there was the do-it-yourself kind of all-in-one platforms, but they weren't very good. They've been improved a lot since then, but they weren't very good. And so I was like, I can do better. And so I built a wedding website using WordPress. And I basically saw the power in being able to build something yourself. And I got a lot of compliments on it. A lot of people said, hey, that's awesome. Like, and I had some friends that said, hey, can you build me a wedding website? So I started building wedding websites for friends. And so I got more and more familiar with building websites. And then from that, I had a couple other people that said, hey, I know you build websites. Can you build a website for my business? And so at this time, it was still very part-time, very freelance, like never had the desire to grow it into a business, but it was just something on the side. I majored in business entrepreneurship, so I always wanted someday to own my own business, but having like an agency type thing just wasn't something that I found interesting at that point. And so my dad and I actually thought, hey, wedding websites seem to be a cool thing. A lot of people are wanting them. What if we create like a do-it-yourself platform where someone can come and sign up and create a wedding website with really nice design templates? And so I built a WordPress multi-site powered wedding website platform with my dad as a partner. And the plan was to grow that and have millions of customers and live happily ever after. It didn't quite work out. Trying to compete with the big wedding companies that had tons of services and tons of offerings in all these different areas.
It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. So we realized they like improved their offering, and then theirs was free. We're trying to get people to pay for hours. And so it got to the point where, like, this isn't a long-term thing. But I learned a lot during that process. And so I knew I wanted to someday have my own online business. And so fast forward a couple of years, still kind of building the occasional website on the side, working at different companies, doing sales and marketing. And I got to the point where I was working a sales job at a really solid company and loved the company, loved the atmosphere, hated the job. And I was like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I really also don't want to start applying at working at other companies and doing that whole thing. I've been building websites on the side for a long time. I think I can do that full time. And maybe it'll grow into an agency to where, like, that's my long-term career. Or maybe that will bridge the gap until I find an online business to where, something I'm super passionate about. And so that's kind of how it all happened. Was I, took this experience that I had kind of built up by accident and said, let's run with it, because at least I'll be able to work for myself, be able to do things the way I want to do them, and have some fun kind of in the process, and we'll kind of just see where it goes. And so I got my wife on board, super supportive. And basically I quit my job and was 0 clients, a lot of experience building websites, but didn't have any type of like recurring revenue in place or any leads. I had nothing. Like if you talk about like diving in head first, sink or swim, like that was me. And I think it kind of goes along with my personality. Like I'm kind of an all or nothing type of person. And so, I've had friends, and I'm sure you've had friends where they have a full-time job and they slowly build up a company on the side until they have enough clients and enough business to replace their salary at their full-time job, and then they quit. Like that's the responsible way of starting a business. And for a lot of people, that's the right choice and the smart thing. Luckily, we didn't have a mortgage, didn't have any kids to feed. And so it was the right time to take that risk and make that sacrifice. And so I was able to pretty quickly get some clients. I had a friend who had a design agency, and so he started outsourcing all of his development to me. And so I was building sites with Divi based off of his designers' designs, and started to get my own clients.
Sorry, Tim, what year did you officially go full-time?
That was 2015, about halfway through 2015.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, you have just expedited the entire, like you went for it. I mean, I feel like when I got in the Divi community in 2016, you were already one of the premier guys with Divi Life and everything. So.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that kind of, what you're saying with the Divi community, also something that kind of happened by accident. I was focused on building websites and getting clients and stuff like that. And I saw people selling child themes right after Divi came out. And I was like, no one's going to buy those. Like, that's stupid. Like that, there's no market for that. And, and then I saw people, happening more and more. I'm like, okay, well, maybe some people are buying them. And I had a plugin that I had developed for a specific client site. And I thought, hey, you know what? I own this plugin. What if I put it on one of the Divi product marketplaces and just kind of see what happens? And so I did. And, it was a $5 plugin. It's the Divi logo swap plugin. It's still for sale. Don't have a lot of people buying it these days, but all it does is when you scroll, it changes the logo. And so if you have two variations of your logo, you can have it show both when the user scrolls. Super simple. But enough people bought it to show me that, hey, there's something here. There's people that are using Divi and wanting to take Divi further than they can out of the box. And they're hungry for Divi specific solutions. And so then I created Royal Commerce child theme. And then it was like, holy cow, like this could be a full-time business. What started as something where, hey, I'll just make a little bit of extra cash here and there. I quickly realized I could make a living from this. And so, it all kind of spiraled from there.
And you were still doing your personal brand site, which was for the timstrifler.com, which is your client stuff. Was that like how, when you got going with Divi Life and the plugin stuff, did you try to market that at all? Or did you just take it as it came with referrals and things like that with that project, with that site?
Oh, with my like client services side of the business? Yeah. I mean, basically what I was able to do was, because we had moved from Southern California to Texas in between this story, basically my client base was in Southern California. And so when I moved to Austin, Texas, it was like, I still had some work going on, just kind of remotely, but it's hard to get new clients that don't already know you in the certain area when you're in a new area. So it was kind of like I was starting over. And so I started focusing on Divi Life more, and then, not going out and trying to get a lot of local business in Austin for web design. But what happened was, as I started doing tutorials on Divi Life and selling products and establishing myself as an expert, I started to get a lot of client service business from all over the world. And so it was like I kind of, put client services on a break while I was concentrating on products, and then that kind of fueled the client services side as well. And so then I was able to do both and all of that. Now I still do client work to this day, but it's like, I don't know, 5 to 10% of my time. And I do it for a couple of reasons. One, just to keep my skills sharp in case I ever need to go back to that in the future if Divi Life disappears tomorrow. And then also, it's hard to come up with product ideas if I'm not in that mindset of actually creating websites. And then additionally, like I want to be doing what I'm teaching. You mentioned me and David, our partnership with WP Gears. We have the course I'm teaching people, I want to be doing it as well and kind of stay in that mindset for that reason too.
I've thought about that too, just to keep my business going. Cause yeah, part of me, I'm at the point where I'm like, I could go full-time courses right now, but I want to stay sharp. And I'm not in a place where I can either sell or turn over my business yet. I'm just not, in that place. At this point, I haven't designed one of our sites in over a year and a half, thanks to my lead designer, Jonathan. But I still do a lot of work, and I oversee him, and we work together. And I'm really taking more of the role of project manager and creative director than anything. But I will say, because it's interesting to hear your story, because I'm kind of like you, just about 2 years behind you, something like that, to where what I'm doing right now sounds like where you were at about 2 years ago. But I'll be honest, like I don't know how you feel with your Tim Strifler with the client work, but I have found it hard. I mean, it's hard to balance that. Like, we don't do any marketing. It's all referrals, and knock on wood, that's how we get our clients, and that's great. But there have been times where I'm like, man, I have so much I want to do with courses and tutorials and stuff, but I just can't get to all that right now with the client stuff. Even with me not designing the sites, like, I mean, I will say too, I had my business since 2010, so it's our client stuff is probably more established than your side stuff. But like, did you ever feel like you didn't have time to do Divi Life with managing Tim Strifler? And have you ever had a team with that, or do you do all that yourself still?
Yeah. So I pretty early on started scaling a team. Mainly the focus was for Divi Life, but then I realized they work for me, my LLC, which is both the client services and the products. And so I pretty quickly realized that, hey, I can have them do both. And so I have designers that will design products for Divi Life, child themes, layouts, etc. But then if I have a client project, I will also have them, design for the client project. And when you have a really solid team that you can depend on, you can give them, any type of work, and, they're going to be able to get it done for you. And so I know what you're saying, because even when you're a project manager, it's still very time consuming. It's like you're not actually doing the work, but like, it's pretty crazy how quickly your day gets eaten up fielding emails, and a lot of times kind of being the middleman too, relaying from the client to the designer. But yeah, no, it's definitely hard to balance for sure. I don't know if I have any advice there. It's just, it kind of comes into different efficiency. I try to do different days. Like, so for example, one of my main, like, big clients, I should say, on the client services side, wanted to have a call today, but because we're doing this interview, and then also I kind of like to stay in a frame of mind for an entire day. So it's like, okay, I'm doing, product stuff all day today. It's like, okay, well, I can have this day set aside where I do client stuff. I just find it easier for myself, kind of shifting it, trying to shift back and forth your brain. Like, if I'm going to be actually like doing a tutorial, it's easier for me to kind of stay in that mindset and do multiple tutorials. And so, like, for example, last week, I started a series, Divi Live Quick Tips, with Divi 4.0 coming out and doing live tutorials. Well, like, I did it all week, and I kind of stayed in that mindset of like being in the Divi builder and the Divi 4.0 theme builder. And so rather than trying to like jump back and forth, it's like my week was eaten up by those tutorials. Obviously I had to have my other stuff going on too that I had to deal with, but kind of all week long, like, that was the main focus, was those tutorials. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but trying to bounce back and forth, I find to be counterproductive.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I do. I will generally at some point check my In Transit Studios email and get back with my team and stuff, but I do it in segments similarly. Like, I will, like Mondays, I generally have a couple like big work segments for In Transit work, for getting projects going, getting things lined up and all that. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are more my joshhall.co content days, to where, like, today we're recording on a Wednesday, but normally Tuesdays and Thursdays I try to keep openings, and I will moving forward with interviews and all that. So it sounds like it's similar. Yeah. I just kind of break it out into segments, because it is tough, like, to really do a good tutorial, or even to be present on this interview. Like, we can't be checking our email and worrying about a widget that went down on a site at the same time. It's just, which I think people could take away from this. Most people aren't going to have, their own Divi brand or their own personal endeavor on the side, but you can do this with projects. Like, sometimes you can have the majority of a day fixed on one project instead of bouncing around. with 8 different projects. And then it's amazing how much work you can get done. I'm sure you can attest to this. If you block out like a 2 or 3 hour segment where email's off, phone is off, you are concentrated. It's amazing how much you can get done. So that's kind of what I apply as well to balancing both endeavors.
Definitely. And everyone's different.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, sorry. I just turned on Siri by accident.
Speaking of distractions,
I know, right?
That's right.
I think everyone's brain is a little bit different the way they think, but I think some level of that, kind of staying in that same mindset. So for example, like, okay, you might not be able to work just on one project for an entire day, but maybe making one day a week your design day, where you're in Divi, you're kind of immersed in the builder, and I think it's easier if it's one project, but you can't always have that luxury. And then making a certain day, okay, this is my sales day, where I do my networking group, and where I go out and have coffee with people in my community to try to build relationships and stuff like that. Or a day where it's like, okay, client calls like all day long type of thing to review websites and stuff. Again, it's not always a perfect system, and you have to juggle things and be flexible. But I just find when you're going back and forth, at least for me, it takes me a long time to from sales mode into design mode. And so it's like you lose a lot of time transitioning that frame of mind.
Definitely. Yeah. I found that segregating and protecting creative time periods and deep work segments is the most important thing you can do to actually get stuff done. Particularly with, because it's just a different, it's a different place in your mind when you're answering emails and doing strategy stuff versus building and creating. And it's stuff, I think it's very important to segment that out. One thing we've talked about before on Divi Chat, and I like what we're talking about here because I think it all segues into being a successful web designer, because these are really important things to know about right from the get-go. I certainly wish I would have had this conversation with you years ago. Before driving myself crazy until I finally, put it into all that. But one thing that really helped me was to have an hour or at least a block in my day for what I like to call reactionary work. And generally it's later in the afternoon, before I wrap up my day. So we started this call at around 2:30. After this is when I plan on checking email to see if there's anything I need to attend to or get lined up before tomorrow. And that has literally changed my life because I'm not constantly checking my email to make sure everything is okay and all that. That habit of having a reactionary block of time has just revolutionized every week and every day for me. So it sounds like you're in a similar path.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many different types of things. Obviously there's email, but blog comments, social media stuff. On the product side, I probably have more than someone who just has a web design business. But yeah, there's all different types of emails. If you have a team, Slack messages, and it's sometimes your team needs something, you kind of have to answer it. You can't just answer it at the end of the day. They need something now. But you can at least, tell them, hey, just so you know, I'm going to be doing this from this time to this time. Don't message me unless it's an emergency type of thing.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's one of those things for me where it's a constant struggle to force myself to do that, because I'm not even though I know that reactive type of work can be a time suck if you do it all day long. It's I still find myself middle of the day checking email. I'm what am I doing? I need to get back to the task at hand.
I know what I do is generally I'll check my email somewhat early. A lot of people don't like to check email first thing. I actually like to, just to see if there's anything I need to deal with right away. Because it's hard for me to be really creative, wondering oh gosh, I hope everything's all right.
Right,
so generally I'll just, and I might not even read every email or get back to people, but I'll just scan it just to make sure everything's cool. Then I'll turn it off. And I'll do the same thing around lunchtime. I'll do a quick scan, get back to things I need to or that I have scheduled to. And my reaction time, that's when I actually engage with it. That's when, if I see an email from a client who says, hey, we need to update this on a site, chances are I don't need to do it right that second if nothing's broken. Right. So we can do it, then, or I can let my lead designer know, hey, this, that kind of thing. So that really ties into having a, sustainable pace as a successful designer. So I think right now, Tim, it might be good to transition to some of your ideas on what it takes to be successful, which is kind of what this is all about. So we talked about your story, talked about how you got started, talked about how you went all in, which I couldn't agree more with. Really, if you try to do something and you're working just as hard on a plan B, plan A is never going to work. It's just never, I mean, within reason. Like for me, when I got started, I did the same thing. I didn't have a mortgage or rent. So I was like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? Like maybe I miss a car payment. I can get by with that. And then, I just kind of went for it and scaled from there. So within reason, but yeah, I think, you really went head first. You built your personal brand with the client stuff, and then you found a niche with Divi Life and everything, and you launched that. And for over 3 years now, 4 years almost, right? It's been very successful. I've seen your upswing. It keeps on going up and up and up as far as your brand and just the awareness in the community. What are some of the factors that you would say are lead to all that success, or what would you recommend people need to know about being successful in web design?
Yeah, a great, excellent question. And really quick, before I get to that, you mentioned, kind of diving in head first, sink or swim. I've heard it. To me, that's what I believe is the right choice. Not everyone can make that happen because of, mortgage, family to feed, that sort of thing. I've heard other people say like, no, if build something on the side, because if you're busy with a full-time job and family and kids, and then if you want it bad enough to where you're able to sacrifice all of your free time to then focus on the business, then it's something, worth it, because you're able to, make it happen even when you have all this other stuff going on. So I feel like that's kind of the other end of the argument where, okay, if you're willing to sacrifice a little free time that you have to work on the business, then it's, a good idea that you should pursue further. But for me, I feel like my personality, and I feel like a lot of other people, it's hard to really focus when you have so much other stuff going on, and able to kind of dive in head first is the right choice. And so that's
interesting viewpoint. Yeah. That's interesting to think about. Yeah. Cause I agree. I just feel like within reason, really, I found that most people who say they're going to start a business one day or something, they start working on the side, 9 times out of 10, it never goes anywhere, because they're not all in. Like you said, they don't really give it their all. But yeah, it is different depending on life situation and kids and mortgage and everything. But yeah, that's an interesting viewpoint. I like that.
Yeah, I heard it on a podcast. Can't remember what the podcast was. But anyways, and that kind of, talking about sacrificing your free time kind of leads me into your question. What do you think it takes to be successful? And I think something that a lot of people don't talk about is sacrifice. I think no matter where you are, no matter what business you're going into, a certain level of sacrifice is going to be necessary. So, for example, in the scenario we just talked about, if you have to keep your full-time job, okay, well, you're sacrificing your free time. You're sacrificing maybe some Saturday mornings, or maybe you're sacrificing sleep. Or if you're like what I did and what you did, Josh, is dive in head first, quit the job, go for it. Okay, well, we're sacrificing our financial stability. We're sacrificing, being able to, go to extra date nights with our wife. We're sacrificing, the ability to, pay our car payments on time, or whatever. There's always going to be some level of sacrifice. And so the reason I bring that up is a lot of people, especially if you're on Facebook and seeing all the ads, all the coaches and gurus trying to teach you and sell things to show you, and they're selling the dream. And people want to be at that place down the road, but they don't realize all of the sacrifice that has to come before that. And so I think that's something that is important, because no matter what you're doing, no matter what phase of your business, it's going to take sacrifice. And so for me and you, we are more established, but we want to get to the next level. Okay, well, we're going to have to sacrifice some things and work really hard to make it happen. And so, so that's something that I think I did a podcast on episode on this a while back. And I just think it's one of those concepts that's just so important that people just don't realize when they're starting a business, that starting a business is a huge sacrifice, and it's going to look different for every person, no matter, where they are in life, no matter where they are in their business, what business they're in. There's going to be some level of sacrifice that takes place. And so it's just kind of the reality of it.
Do you remember that episode number, Tim? I'll link to that in the show notes.
I don't, but I can find it super, super quick.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, you can always send it to me. Yeah, I totally agree, man. It's one of those things too, while you're finding that, I found where a lot of people they just want the end. They want the reward. And it probably is due to all these ads and stuff like that. And then as soon as somebody gets into the thick of it and sees what's really involved to get some success, particularly just in regards to web design. I mean, this is true in everything, but in web design in particular, as soon as things get tough, that's when most people jettison and most people bail. And I feel like if you can just get past those first few sacrifices, it really opens up the doors to something amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's episode 606 on
Okay,
WP the
cool. I'll link to
podcast.
that for you.
Awesome. Thank you. And the things we talked about already are kind of the most obvious things, like, financial stability, free time and stuff. But there's also layers of sacrifice that you don't realize until you get there, like your comfort. So for example, in web design, like in order to be successful, we all want referrals coming in from day one, but that's not typically what happens. You have to kind of get out there, put yourself out there. And so you're sacrificing your comfort, getting out of your comfort zone, and grinding away, trying to make it happen. And so, that's a big thing too. You could kind of make the argument that, sacrificing your comfort, but then also sacrificing your pride, because getting rejected by a business or, doing a cold call or something like that. I know we all hate cold calling, but sometimes it's necessary when you're starting out. Getting hung up on is a terrible thing. I worked several sales jobs and, having to do cold calling, it sucks. And getting hung up on and getting that rejection, it like destroys your pride, and you'll be like having a little bit of confidence from like having a teeny bit of success. And then like right after you get hung up on, and then it just like slams you down. There's so many different things like that. Like in the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, business ownership, that people just don't expect. And they kind of go in with, a little bit of, being naive, but I don't know. So I hope that's helpful.
I think that's great.
Like, that's something that I wish I would have known and kind of be able to prepare for early on, and kind of looking back and looking at, wow, like I have sacrificed a lot to get to where I am. And it's great to be here, but I can't forget, everything that I sacrificed along the way to make it happen.
That's a really good point. And sacrifice, just with all, I feel like all hardships and everything that you have to go through in order to get just some semblance of success, or you land a website job, or, you make a client for life, or things go well, it really builds like a muscle in you that just gets stronger over time. And often I've found, I'm sure you can back me up on this, the more failures you have early on, like those are the best learning experiences and lessons.
Totally.
And it just, the trick is you just have to get through that, and you can't let that discourage you enough to just let it go. I mean, I have failed. I continue to fail on stuff all the time. Just yesterday, there was a big project that I had met with a medical group, and I was really hoping it was going to go forward, and they didn't move forward. And I was bummed about that. And I'm kind of looking at that like, okay, because a lot of our leads, I'm all right if they don't move forward, that's fine. But this one I actually really wanted. So now I'm kind of thinking, okay, how can I learn from this? How can I, figure out what I did and what I could have done better for the next time I'm in that position? I think that's the attitude you have to have in regards to sacrifice, because, I guess it's what rejection and failure. That's what a lot of people are not willing to get into or sacrifice to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think getting back to, focusing on your business full time when you're starting out rather than making it a side gig, I feel like the failure is more real when it's your full focus. When it's a side gig, you don't care because you have the safety net, the comfort of your full-time job. So when things don't pan out, like you don't feel that failure as much. At least that's kind of the way I felt it. When I had it as a side gig opposed to when I, later jumped in full time, it was like, oh wow, like I got to make it happen. Like this is it. Like I don't have this other job over here that's going to provide.
I'll back you up on that. Yeah. Cause I didn't have the first episode. I talk about my story and my experience with how I went from working as a cabinet maker and then doing design on the side and stuff and being in the band world and everything. So I didn't have a full-time job when I started my business, but it was on the side. It was basically, I was doing community college classes and I was working part-time jobs. And yeah, I totally agree. The times that I didn't get a job or something failed, it didn't really hit me as hard as when it was full-time. And it seems like once that endeavor is full-time, I don't want to say it consumes you, but you do kind of become like it's your baby. It's like it's
Yeah.
you, it's an extension of yourself. So you do feel it harder. On the same token, when things go well, it's freaking awesome. Like when you land a job that is really good, or you have a great client experience, or you can have some freedom to actually, not have to work 9 to 5 through Monday and Friday, that like you feel it even more as far as the satisfaction and the just that feeling like you've not made it, but you've conquered, you sacrificed, you conquered a lot of those hurdles. And yeah, it's just awesome. So yeah, I think that's great. Sacrifice in every area obviously is huge in any business, but particularly with web design, I think what you're talking about with stability, with a lot of the things that are most, you could probably imagine you're going to be sacrificing. The freedom that comes with web design, I find outweighs all of that.
100% agree. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the other thing, when you asked me preparing for this episode, what are one or two things that you'd like to talk about? So sacrifice being one. The second one being consistency, which I think kind of goes along with dedication. Being consistent is huge. And I think consistency beats intensity. It's something I kind of tell myself quite often, and not just business, but all areas of life. Being consistent is way more valuable than, coming out of the gate and like, giving it 180%, because you can't sustain 180% very long.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, like
hustle, go, go, go.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I'm not saying like be lazy, but be consistently lazy. Like that's obviously not it at all. But like, for example, now this isn't business related, but I'm proud to say, since I've been back in California, I've lost 20 pounds in like 5 months without changing what I eat and without going to the gym. And it's because consistently every single day, literally every single day, I've gone on a 3-mile hike with my dog. And so I wasn't like, unhealthily obese or anything like that. But now I'm healthier, and I didn't really set out to go and lose a bunch of weight or anything like that, but I just wanted to kind of overall be healthier.
Just had web design pudge. Yeah.
Web design pudge. That's actually, that's a real
I'm working
thing.
some of that off right now, actually.
And, I didn't lose, 5 pounds in a week. It was little by little, very slowly and gradually, but like, this is fresh in my mind because I just weighed myself yesterday for the first time in a very long time. I was like, oh, wow. Like, I know I've been, my pants are a lot looser and I'm seeing the difference, but actually like being able to quantify it was pretty exciting. And so I bring that up because I think everyone, when they're starting a business, they want to, come out of the gate, like I said, 180% and, go to every networking thing possible and, cold call and do everything, which is good. Sometimes that can be good, but that's also how you get burnt out. And so I think being consistent and finding things that are proven to work and doing them consistently, even if you don't see immediate results. And so I know, Josh, you're big on this because you are super consistent with your Divi tutorials, and you're super consistent with, the quick tips and stuff like that. And I think, you didn't see huge results right away, but you stuck with it and you were consistent with it. And another example is David Blackman and Corey Jenkins with Davey Space and Aspen Grove Studios with their content marketing strategy. Content marketing is not an overnight success. You have to be consistent with it. And over time, you see results. And so that's something I wish I would have done is content marketing with the Divi stuff a lot earlier on and a lot more consistently. But I think the lesson there with web design is find something that works and do it consistently. So if that means being consistent with a networking group or setting up referral partners, be consistent with it, stick with it. You might not see results overnight, but over time you will. Or if, you need to consistently get coffee with business owners in your community just to build relationships and set up referral partners, then be consistent with it. One coffee, per week or, every 2 weeks or whatever. So,
You do. I can't back up what you're saying more because I fully agree. I've seen it in my life in a lot of different areas. And it's interesting because when it comes to consistency, to your point, it's not going to happen overnight. When you think about building websites and setting your schedule and stuff, like there's practical things like if you're consistently working on a site, you'll get it done faster, things like that. But there's also something very powerful. And this was my quick tip last week, actually. So perfect timing.
Oh, nice.
Every Tuesday, I'm still doing my Tuesday quick tips on my Facebook. And it was that there is power in consistency. And it's interesting because it'll filter through every aspect of your life. Practically, I have found that, so I'm in a networking group. We meet every Friday morning at 7:30. When I first joined the group, I actually helped found it. I was very apprehensive about doing something weekly. I was like, there's no way I'm going to have time to do something for an hour every week. And that early in the morning, that sounds awful. This is before I had kids and I was going to be up then anyway. And I was just thinking like, there's no way I'm going to be able to commit to that. But I liked the group. I started getting referrals immediately. So I, helped found it. And this month we've been in that group for 7 years. We started that in 2012. So I have been in a networking group every Friday morning, unless I'm sick or unless we're on vacation or something. Every Friday morning, you'll find me at IHOP in Grove City at 7:30 a.m. because that's my networking group. And that has not only translated to leads and referrals from people, but that has helped instill in me like I don't even know what to call it. There's something in me now that I feel like I can start a project and finish it. Like, there has not been one project that I've started that I haven't finished really since then. I mean, maybe years ago. I have that gumption now to get something done. And I think a lot of that stems from having something consistently every week. Like it just builds a muscle. And I found that most people, because you're not like this, and I think a lot of other people who do stuff consistently are the exception. Most people are dabblers, meaning they'll do something for about 3 or 6 months. That could be in every area of life. That could be starting their web design stuff, or we have people come to our networking group all the time. I can tell almost within 2 minutes of talking to them whether they're going to be a 3-monther or a 6-monther, and then they're gone. And it's so funny because like it happens every time. And I know with my networking group, the people who have been in there since day one, we all have thriving businesses, and it's no coincidence. Right. Even if it's not directly from that group, the power of doing something consistently every week is just so powerful. So yeah, we see it in our Divi Web Designers Facebook group. You're an admin with me there. Yeah. How many people do we see are really amped up and going ham and commenting on everything, and then they're really active for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then they just either slowly drop off or they're just completely gone. Like there's no consistency there, So yeah, I totally agree, man. There's power in that, and it will show itself, if not directly, really quickly, it will show itself eventually in all areas of life. And I think it's a big contributor to success in any business, but particularly web design. I think consistency wise, like the 2 things I've done this year are my networking group and then my Tuesday quick tips. I decided to do a quick tip every Tuesday for this year. And there has been some times I'm like, crap, it's Tuesday, I got to do a quick tip, I'm going to have to think of something. I'm not really feeling it right now, but just that act of doing it and being consistently has helped me tremendously. I think practically for people doing web design, it's really important to be, to look at like a sustainable pace and having a schedule to where you can actually build consistency. Like if you say yes to everything and you commit to too much, then you have to put yourself in a position to win and to actually follow through with consistency, which is why sometimes when I recommend to clients about blogging, because a lot of my clients would be like, oh yeah, I need to start a blog. I'm like, you know what? Set yourself a deadline. Give yourself like say you're going to do a blog once a week for 2 months. That's 8 blogs. You can do 8 blogs in 2 months, something like that, to where it gives you a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. That's what I'm doing with my quick tips. After 2019, I'm taking a break on my quick tips and maybe I'll start them back up again. But giving yourself like a healthy window, because that's how I launched my tutorials. I built my tutorial catalog up very quickly because I did 1 tutorial every week for 12 weeks. And then I gave myself a break. That way it wasn't overwhelming. So if there's just a little idea for folks who are looking for a practical way to add consistency, give yourself like some light at the end of the tunnel with something. See how it goes.
I like that a lot. And I remember you said that up front. You committed to 1 a week for 12 weeks. And so people knew what to expect. And so doing that kind of also helped keep you accountable, because you're like, if I stop now, like I'm not going to look very good, because I told people this is what's going to happen. But yeah. And I think when it comes to like consistency or I guess, getting business as web designers. You mentioned like the dabblers, the people. So I feel like there's two reasons that people will stop and they won't be consistent. One is they don't see results right away. And that's like, okay, yeah, duh, you got to be consistent and you got to stick with it. But I think the second reason, which I feel like isn't as obvious to people until later down the road when they're experiencing the downs, is they stop being consistent because they are seeing results and they get busy and they think, oh, okay, I don't need to go to this networking group anymore. I don't need to, go and do my, outreach emails to business owners or whatever. Cause now I'm getting some referrals and I'm having success. And so they stop and they think that they don't need to be consistent with it anymore. But what happens is they're busy working on all those jobs and then they have the down part of the roller coaster. And so, not just with web design, but really any type of service business, you hear about, the roller coaster, the ups and downs, the feast or famine. When it's good, when it rains, it pours. And then you go through the slow spells. And I think what can help eliminate those slow spells is having consistency, doing things that are going to bring in more business down the road and sticking with it so that you don't have those lulls. You're constantly filling your pipeline. You're constantly, you mentioned, Josh, your networking group. Every single one of the people that were the founding members are still in it today and have these thriving businesses. Well, any one of you guys could have stopped and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm good now. I have business. Like, I don't need to keep doing this, but you didn't.
Happens all the time. People get too busy and you're like, I just can't keep up with it. Sorry. And then what happens 3 to 6 months later, they're back in the group or they're like, hey, can you help me out with getting some referrals? It happens every time, man. You're totally right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think if people realize that consistency isn't just important, when you're trying to get business in the beginning, but it should be done all the time, because that's how you build a successful, sustainable business long term. Is you don't just focus on the short term, you focus on the long term. So,
and it's interesting. I had a fear of starting a podcast because I didn't want to overcommit myself. Yeah. And it's why it's taken me almost a year. I've been talking about doing a podcast for a long time, and I announced it earlier this year. To your point, keeping accountable. I said that I was going to launch a podcast in 2019. The year was just crazy. I didn't know when I was going to. I planned it in the summer, but we just had a lot going on in the summer. Fall, I launched my business course. Business is booming, but I was like, you know what? I'm at the place now where I can dedicate a certain amount of time each week. Or the cool thing about podcasts and content marketing is you can bulk record stuff and then schedule it out for, I know with WP Gears, you talk about how you do that to where you might record several episodes and then just set them up for the next few weeks.
We usually record minimum of 5, usually 5 to 7 to even 10.
Yeah. That's great. And that's something that inspired me to get going with the podcast. Cause I know now, particularly, because I'm used to having consistency and doing things and seeing them through, I know this is not going to be a one and done thing, and I'm not going to release 5 episodes and disappear. Like, people can expect some consistency with this, and it's going to build long term. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So sacrifice, consistency, anything else that you think are kind of the big things with being successful in web design?
Those are the two things that I think are important that don't get talked about a lot. That's kind of, the main stuff I brought to the table. I think people are always looking for ideas on how to get business when it comes to web design, especially new people. So I thought, hey, why don't we share a couple ideas if you're cool with that, Josh? Practical ideas people can go and do now. One thing that I think people don't realize is, or maybe you don't realize how important it is businesses want to hire someone that they know and trust already, or someone that gets referred to them. So someone that they know and trust, knows and trusts. It's a mouthful to say that. It's funny because when you see, all the time I'll see these random ads that'll come up from like web designers or agencies on Facebook, but I'll see the ad maybe once, maybe twice, and then it goes away, because you can't just throw up a Facebook ad and expect to get a ton of business, because people want to hire someone that they already know, or someone that's recommended, not some random business that's showing up in their newsfeed. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure there's people that have gotten business from running Facebook ads. And so with that said, I think if you are new to web design and you are getting into it and you're listening to those podcasts because you're like, give me tips, I need business, reach out to your existing network, especially if you have people that you already know that are business owners. Even if they don't want to hire you or don't need to hire you, chances are they're going to know someone that will, and they can refer you. And so that's one thing that I did early on, was I reached out to everyone I knew. And that's how I got my first like several months worth of business, was from a friend who had a design agency. And so he started giving me all these referrals and all this recurring work. And so that's like the low hanging fruit that to me seems like such a obvious thing, but some people just don't think to do that, and they don't want to be spammy or annoying.
Right. Same here. Yeah. So we both have a business course. You have the Divi Business Experts course with David, and I just recently launched my web design business course, which is not Divi specific, but I mean, I say that to say I echo exactly what you said, because that's how I started. I started getting clients with people in my current networks, people I knew, whether it was church or friends or whatever. I didn't come across salesy or spammy, but I just made it very clear that I was doing websites now and I'd love to help businesses out. And that is an amazing way to build your portfolio very quickly. I mean, there's different thoughts as to whether you should do stuff pro bono or cheap. I'm not opposed to, when you just get started out, doing a couple websites just to build a portfolio for free. You just want to make sure you don't let people know it was free, and you want to get testimonials or something in exchange for that. But you get to that point where, you really, like, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you get clients? How do you get clients? I'm like, people I know and referrals with my networking group. That has literally where it started. And then I grew it from there. And now I'm in the same boat. I'm getting people all over the country and across the globe with my joshhall.co stuff. And people are now finding our sites. Like, we just landed a barbershop in Philadelphia. We're in Columbus, Ohio, and they found one of our sites. They were Googling sites, and it said site designed by In Transit Studios. And that's how we landed them. So it's, but that's not the place to start. Yeah. Right. Start close, start with your personal network. Even if you have to start small, it's amazing how it'll, how you go from there. One thing I'll say too on that, while we're on that topic, is I know that a lot of people, when it comes to being successful in web design, are so concerned with new clients, leads, traffic, new people, new projects and stuff. Yeah. But I am astounded at how many people neglect their current clients. It is, I would venture to say, well more than 10 times cheaper to work with your current clients again, or to have them, get referrals through them, than getting new leads. So I just can't encourage people enough that even if you have 3 to 5 clients, do what you can to make them clients for life, have maintenance plans, have recurring income strategies to where you can help grow their business. And it will add much more sustainability than that feast or famine where you're new project done, done. Yeah, so exactly. I don't know. I found that my clients have really appreciated me, and my team now being in their corner ongoing, as opposed to just constantly trying to find new clients. I'm really not nearly as worried about new clients as much as I am taking care of our current clients.
Yeah, no, I love that focus, because not only recurring revenue, future projects from them when they need, something else done, but also you take care of them. They're going to be your biggest fan and refer you to every company. Oh, you got to go check out Tim Strifler. You got to go check out Josh Hall. He's my web guy, right? Like, you become their web guy, where like they think of you as part of their team. You're the person that they can turn to in order to, get stuff done. And so they're going to happily refer you to, because here's the thing, business owners hang out with a lot of other business owners, either from direct partnerships, businesses working with other businesses and, doing stuff like that, or they just have other friends that own other different types of businesses. And so, I couldn't agree more. The best thing you can do is do really great work, take really great care of them, let them know that you do care and you do want them to succeed online. And they'll be your biggest fan for sure.
It's what I call a hot lead, when one of your best clients refers somebody, because that person is already in the frame of mind. They want your service. They feel like they probably trust you at this point, because you did really good work and you're seeing results with their friend or whatever. All you have to do is get them to, so you say no and trust. I say no, like, and trust. Just throw like, because I think likability is a big one too. People 100%. Don't want to work with someone they don't like. So that you've already got one check.
I trust you, but I hate you.
Right. God, I hate that guy. Yeah, but no, if you can just get those other two, get them to like you first, and then to know you, and then that, gosh, is just such a better way to close. I mean, the closing rate on those deals are going to be much higher than having to cold call somebody, hoping they're interested in a website, or they're, like, I know some people have referred people to me in the past and they just give me their phone number. And I hate that because I don't want to call them if they're on the way dropping their kids off on soccer practice or something.
Right.
I'd much rather an email intro or something.
Yeah,
but yeah,
for sure.
Great points, man. Great points when it comes to.
Yeah. And something else I think that someone can do, you want practical advice. Okay. Like doing great work and taking care of your clients. Okay. That's good. But how do you get to the point where you have the opportunity to do that if you don't have any work? And so another thing you could do, especially if you're new to an area, and this is something that looking back, I wish I would have done when I moved to Austin, was reach out to other business owners. I'm not saying cold call and say, hey, can I build you a website? Like, obviously that's not going to get you anywhere, but instead reach out to business owners in the area, send them an email and say, hey, I'm a local business owner. I'm looking to connect with successful professionals like you, feed their ego a little bit, get them to like you, and say, hey, I'd love to buy you lunch. I want to learn, anything I can from you about being successful in this area because I'm new here. Like, can I take you out to lunch? Not everyone's going to say yes, but a few people will. And that's how you get your foot in the door. You get people to know you, trust you, like you. And then maybe if they need a website, they'll hire you, or they'll at least be able to put you in touch with other people. And so I think the bottom line is you can't expect to get business if you're not out in the community talking to people and, meeting people and connecting with them. Josh gets a lot of business. I imagine you get a lot of business like from your Josh Hall stuff. So people outside of your
50-50 now, about 50-50.
Okay. Yeah. Same here. When I started my Divvy stuff, I started getting leads from all over the world. Well, most people, unless you have, an online platform where you're, doing tutorials and stuff like that, like that's probably not going to happen. So your core local area is going to be your bread and butter. And that's the way it is, for most professionals. And so, you can't expect to get a lot of work unless you're out there meeting people and people know you. Because again, people want to hire people that they know, like, and trust. So you got to get out there and let people get to know you.
We're going to have to do another episode on probably just getting clients. Because this could definitely be a great episode, which, I mean, both of our courses, we're basically probably just going to dish out everything we talk about in our courses. But no, I think it's great, man. I mean, hopefully this is helpful to folks listening who are, are either locally or, remote. We covered some strategies for remote work as well.
Yeah.
So I meant to ask, you had mentioned, sacrifice and consistency. You mentioned discipline too. Would you kind of loop that in with those two, or do you feel like this? Because I agree. I think discipline is something that is extremely important, especially when it comes to staying focused and being disciplined about what you will and will not do. I mean, that can apply to a lot of areas in business. Would you kind of say that's a third?
Absolutely. And I think discipline goes hand in hand with the consistency and the sacrifice. You have to be disciplined and have, the mindset in order to be able to sacrifice. Because if you're not disciplined enough, you're going to be like, wait, why am I giving this up? Like, do I really want this business that bad? I like my, my cushy lifestyle right now with my salary I'm getting from this company. And so, you have to be really disciplined with the consistency stuff too, because if not, you'll think of a million reasons why to not go and do that one thing that you should be doing. Like Josh, with your quick tips, you could think of a million other things you could be working on, and you're tired. You have one daughter and another one on the way. Like, you could think of a million things to do instead of taking the time and effort to do that quick tip. But you have the discipline to be consistent with it. And I think what that comes from, at least in my opinion, is the decision to be successful. And I think is actually in high school, one of my really good friends, his dad had a talk with us, and he's like a really successful business owner. And he basically told us that success is a decision. And I don't remember a whole lot of that conversation. I was 15 or 16 at the time. But that was something that stuck with me all these years later, that success is a decision. And basically, when you decide to succeed in whatever it is, whatever your business is, whatever your goals are, and you make that decision, and nothing is going to stop you from, achieving that, and you make that decision to succeed, then you will succeed if you're consistent, and willing to make the sacrifices and put in the hard work and be disciplined. And so I think that's kind of where the discipline factor comes in is, it comes from that, kind of deep down feeling of I'm not letting anything, get in my way of succeeding at this business. And so
That's
it's kind of
great,
like,
man. I was just going to say, I mean, I'm just thinking like I jotted that down because that's such a great quote. I think I've heard that before, but I don't think I heard it in this context. So it's kind of resonating more right now. Success is a decision. And I feel like that has held true for me. And not only doing something consistently, because like when I said I was going to do a quick tip every Tuesday this year, I basically said like that was my decision. I was going to be successful in doing that. I know that's going to translate to course sales and that kind of thing, financial success, but more practically, that's, a little thing that was like I committed to doing that. I've had to sacrifice to do it. I've had to stay consistent, and I've had to be disciplined to have the time to do it. And yeah, it seems like success as a decision is kind of all encompassing with that. And I think practically that's huge for web design in general, because if a client wants to go live with a site in 2 or 3 months or whatever, you kind of have to decide, and you kind of have to both keep each other accountable. Like, we are going to launch this thing by this date. This, our success of that has to be our decision. And all the things we talked about, the sacrifice, consistency, and discipline, are all going to come into play in that entire process with getting that site done. So, wow. Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah. And I think, something you mentioned before, like it's kind of all like a muscle, and, it's going to take, a lot more work on the front end to get to the point where being consistent is easy and sacrifice does come easy. And, but once you are the type of person that you built up that muscle to where when you decide something, you do it, it'll get easier and easier. And, there's something my wife actually said the other day. She was saying like, I need to go do, like, she signed up for like this workout program, and, it's a monthly subscription. She's like, I need to like be consistent with it. Like, can you help me keep me accountable and like make me do it and stuff? And she's like, when you want to do something, you just decide to do it, and you do it, and you do it every day. And like, she's like, I can't do that. And it kind of like sunk in, and it's like, well, that hasn't, like, I definitely have not always been that way. Like, that's not something that came natural, but I grew that muscle to where when I would make a decision that, hey, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to be consistent, and blah, 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 then I followed through. And so I think it's something that it does take practice. You do have to build up that muscle to where I'm not going to, like you said with the podcast, like you knew you didn't want to commit to it until you were able to be consistent and it was going to, be successful. And so, but now that you have, like, there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it. And so, you've built up to the point where you're not going to commit and decide something unless like it's 110% going to make it happen type of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's big for getting you through those downtimes too. Cause when you get through, sacrificial periods, those can be very trying. Like, if you're committed to doing something, it will help you kind of pull you through or help you push through some of those downtimes, whether it's a lean month or whether it's, personal stuff going on. Or have you ever had like, cause it seems like on the outside, it looks like things have been growing so well with Divi Life. You started WP Gears, you have a podcast. It seems like you're just like the pinnacle of success with web design. Have there been some periods where stuff has just been really tough? You've, so this stuff has helped you get through?
There's definitely times where like, I'm like, you know what? I'm giving up on Divi Life. Like, I can't handle, like where there's like, any type of business you're in, when you're dealing with people, there's going to be like negative people. You're going to have irate customers no matter what you do. Like, you can't please everyone. And so we've definitely had our fair share of irate customers that are freaking out and saying nasty things. And we're like, whoa, we definitely did not deserve that. Like, we're not perfect, but we try really hard. And so like, you get too many of those customers in too close of a time frame, it like wears on you. And it's like, you know what? Like, is this worth it? Like, and you kind of question all of that. So there's definitely been some times and seasons like that. But I think for the most part, it's been pretty smooth. And I attribute that to just, the Divi community is amazing. There's, 99% of our customers are incredible. And, with Divi growing at a rapid pace, it's feeding customers into Divi Life. And then also, I had a lot of failures like pre-Divi Life. Like, I mentioned like always wanted to have an online business. Well, I mentioned the wedding website, that me and my dad started to, be a do-it-yourself platform. Well, that was definitely a failure. Well, there's like 4 more other stories similar to that. That was kind of the main one that kind of got the furthest, but like so many other ones that failed before they even started. And so I think we could do a whole nother episode on why failure is, so important. But
no, that's good though. Just because, I mean, I can only imagine with a product business. I mean, I have my fair share of stuff with courses, but it's way different than a product business. And I know, like, for me recently, actually just this week, I kind of started out this week with, today's Wednesday, I started out just not with a great couple first days of the week. Like, we just had some stuff going on with a couple projects that kind of wore me down a little bit. I feel like I just haven't even just sold as many courses as I have the past couple of weeks as normal. And I kind of seemed like everything kind of fed in together. And then we had one issue with a client where I had a miscommunication with my designer on the amount of hours we were working, and he wasn't real appreciative of that. And I'm going to end up paying for that project. And I just was really in a point where I'm like, man, I just feel bummed out. I was like, I don't know if this is going to be a great time to start my podcast in this frame of mind. But I was like, you know what? It's all good. Like, I slept on it, and then today was much better. And then, there's still some stuff we're working out, but I feel much better just talking with you and starting this podcast now. So I think that just goes back to, how that success is a decision. Like, we decided we're doing this, and by golly, I feel a lot better. I'm on a much better frame of mind, and I know I'll wake up tomorrow ready to hit it. Yeah,
I can totally relate to that. Like, so many things going wrong, and I think I can relate to, there's a huge value in a good night of sleep, waking up refreshed, but then also like being a business owner, an entrepreneur can be like the loneliest job in the world. And so having people that you can talk to, like Josh and I talking now, obviously we're recording for the podcast episode, but having a network of people that you can, relate to, that do know what's going on, and you can, kind of get through the week with, how important that is. Other web designers that understand, like how frustrating, WordPress can be sometimes, or, how, this last Divi update just broke my site, like having people to kind of share that load with you of professional friends, I guess you could call them, I think is really important.
Yeah. It's good to have a healthy network of people to vent to in a healthy way without trashing Divi or trashing everything. Yeah, exactly. But that way it doesn't build up. And then when your customer is asking you questions, you're not just like, shut up, you just lose it on a customer, So,
and by the way, that example, I hear that somewhat often. A Divi update has never broke one of my site besides minor like CSS stuff. That was
same here. Same here. Like, I don't know. Just, I guess it's easier to say, but I've had the same experience. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Tim, this has been great, man. This has been some really good thought-provoking stuff. I mean, like I said, I think we could probably have about 10 offshoots of episodes in this stuff, which are things that we both cover in both of our businesses. Course, I would definitely encourage people, to not only check out our courses, but really think about learning from other people who have been in your shoes, just in general, whether it's through tutorials or blogs or courses. I'm a big fan of courses. I still take courses. I just went through a podcast course before I launched this, and I'm very happy I did. Like, I learned from people who have been there, because you'll just save a lot of time. I don't want to say it's the fast track to success, but you'll definitely, I feel like you will avoid, you're going to have hardships and challenges, but I feel like I think, Tim, you'll probably back me up. You'll avoid a lot of the really detrimental things that you and I probably went through by learning from people. I mean, even just listening to this podcast, you'll probably avoid some things that we went through.
Yeah, learning from other people's mistakes. I think it's easy for people to share their successes and trying to learn from that, but I feel like most people can learn from other people's failures more than their successes, things to avoid. And talking about courses, because I know, our course has been successful. Just because you've taken my course doesn't mean you can't take Josh's, and vice versa, because I think learning from multiple people is huge. There's things that I cover that he doesn't, and vice versa, and just different outlooks and perspectives. And we actually have overlap of students that are in both our courses, but I think it's amazing.
Yep. I have a couple who mentioned that. They were like, I love David and Tim's. I wanted yours too, because you just have a different perspective. And Let's be honest, the price points of our courses, like, if you built a business and you did it for 5 years, the amount of time and lessons learned that would be wasted, the thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars would be, spent in your time and lessons learned, where, both of our courses, you'll just learn. So, I mean, yeah, I totally agree. Like, it's worth having different viewpoints, even on the same subject. Same with courses, same with tutorials, same with posts, and different stuff too. I mean, I think that applies to all areas of life.
Yeah, and I experienced that this week. You mentioned tutorials. Divi 4.0, I think there's probably like 4 or 5 tutorials out there, and mine being one of them, on how to make the Divi 4.0 header fixed or sticky. That was like a major question. Everyone's like, oh, how come my header's not sticky like it was before? And so there's like 5 different tutorials. They're all a little bit different. I don't think there's one that's necessarily better than the other. It's just slightly different way of doing things. There's infinite ways to do something in Divi, and so getting different people's perspective is always a good thing.
Yep, totally agree. Awesome, Tim. Well, this has been great, man. Where would you like people to head to after checking out this show? I mean, you've got Divi Life, WP Gears. We'll link to that episode you mentioned. Is there anything you want to mention or plug right now that people can check you out at?
Yeah, I'd say products, divilife.com. It's where my Divi plugins, child themes, layouts can be found, including our membership, which gets you access to everything. And then wpgears.com is the home of WP the podcast, which is a daily podcast. We're on break right now, but we're going to be coming back soon. And then also
much quicker episodes than what we're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. So daily, like 5 to 7, sometimes 10 minutes long, more like a quick little bite-sized chunk of here's how you do this, or here's 5 things to do this, whatever. So.
Yeah. And you mentioned your course, the Divi Business Expert course, which is very highly rated. And like I said, it is interesting that we have students who have gone through both and are finding a lot of success with the different strategies and different, our experiences or different experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yep. And then
awesome,
my client services, timstrifler.com, hasn't been updated in like 4 years. So I get people that be like, hey, your map's not working on your contact page. I'm like, oh, but like the time to fix that when it's not like my main focus is, it's hard to find.
Right. Yeah. low end task. Not worth worrying about over courses or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, Tim. Well, thank you for your time today, man. We'll link all these links and everything in the show notes. Do you have a parting thought for anybody?
No, I was just going to say thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it's an honor. And I know, I'm going to be having you on some of my stuff on the other end. So, definitely won't be our last conversation with the two of us.
No doubt. Sounds great, man. All right, Tim. Well, thanks for the time, and we'll catch you on the next episode, man.
Awesome. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.